Hello everybody, this is April the 14th, 2015, and this is our second hour today, and we're going to continue talking about how we're going to stimulate the economy to get things going again, given all the tremendous hurdles we have. Earlier today we talked about the fact that the United States is in a war zone. I mean, it's sort of hard to believe, but the United States is actually in a declared war zone. Now, if you may remember, many of you are not as old as me and did not live through the Vietnam era, but we lobbied hard as kids that were almost of age to be drafted. I had my draft card, by the way. I had a high number, like 268 or something, but I didn't know that the number had something to do with whether or not you had a high chance of being drafted. Apparently the lower the number you had, the greater chance of being drafted. But being in college preparatory, I guess maybe gave me a high number, or maybe by luck or whatever. But I was ready to go and serve my country. I was told back in high school, back in those days, that we had to stop communism from moving further to the south into South Vietnam. Otherwise they would gain access to a warm water port, and apparently that was worrying the Navy and worrying our politicians, to the point that they thought, well, if they were able to get a warm water port, then God forbid they might be able to build a warship. Well, it's funny how it didn't seem to stop Vladimir Putin, or the president of Russia back in the Soviet Union back in those days, from building many weapons, and they were able to build ships whether it had a warm water port or not. But I guess it makes it easier. Anyway, make a long story short, let's just try to stay focused here. Before we get going, I just have to do this to you folks. I want to thank everybody who's called me and shown interest in the show and given me support. I know that, look, I'm new at this. I never ran for office before. Frankly, it's a scary thing. I mean, I'm not really worried about being able to run the country as much as I'm worried about whether or not I follow all of the stinking rules that have to be followed, because it's almost like the system is rigged to keep putting the same shills and oligarchs back in power. Now, I told you the best thing that we can do right now, short of actually causing some kind of civil commotion, which isn't going to solve anything or do anything, the best thing to do is to use the power of the ballot box to make sure we do not re-elect anyone who's in power now, because we know right now things are about as bad as they can get, short of us having some kind of a civil war or something. I mean, the United States of America right now is a declared battleground. Now, why I was talking about Vietnam is that in Vietnam, it wasn't even a declared war. Now imagine, I mean, we were dumping Agent Orange, defoliant. We were that Agent Orange was killing the forest canopy, which provides oxygen to the earth. I mean, if Al Gore was alive back in those days, well, I guess he was, but apparently he wasn't. I never heard of him protesting the defoilant of South Vietnam. And all of those trees there, which many of them were hardwood trees and even exotic trees like teak trees and rosewood trees, or what, I don't know all the names of the trees, but I do know that there were very exotic trees, and some of them were similar to, if not the same kind of trees, that the guitar maker, that Fender guitar maker company, just got in trouble for importing from Madagascar a dead tree that had been marked for, well, I guess they would have just used it as firewood if they hadn't turned it into the necks of guitars. Which, I mean, if I were a dead tree and I had a choice of where to put my dead body, I'd say I couldn't think of a better use for my dead body than to be in the hands of a guitar player, someone who maybe become famous, and actually for the rest of my dead life, so to speak, or dead useful body's life, be the neck of a guitar that plays beautiful music and is recorded and listened to by the rest of humanity for the rest of time. So the whole theory that, you know, one day we're bombing Vietnam in an effort to kill the trees so that then we can kill the people, and then the next day we're saying, well, we can't even have a little piece of wood here on a guitar and we're going to charge this guy millions of dollars. I mean, it seems to me that maybe he did something more than just that. And of course, they didn't say that. They just said that he had this wood, and they SWAT teamed his building. I mean, for God's sake, you know, if they had a problem about the wood, why didn't they just send the mailman down there and just say, or the paper boy or something, and just say, oh, we have a question about where the wood came from, and the police officer's going to come down and look at your wood, and they're going to take a piece of the wood and examine it in a laboratory to determine where we want to ask you where it came from. Instead, they went down there with loaded assault rifles. I mean, suppose somebody had gotten shot. You know, nowhere in the world do the police SWAT team somebody for having a dead piece of wood in their backyard that came from some other country that they had a permit to use, and a legitimate company that's been in business for years making musical instruments. I mean, look, I don't know what kind of drugs these people in Washington are taking, but apparently it's making them very hostile. It's making them make bad decisions. And right now, I don't feel very comfortable knowing that I live in a war zone, where if I were in Vietnam, I would know that technically and legally I wasn't in a war zone, because they never declared a war in Vietnam. But 60,000 of my fellow Americans who are just a year or two older than me, who were drafted or volunteered to go to Vietnam, were killed over there. Not to mention the millions of people on the other side that were killed as a result of the chemicals we dropped on them, bombs and bullets and napalm and every other kind of weapon that we used over there against those people. So I have to start to wonder, what is it that the government knows? What is it that our congressman knows? What is it that our senator knows? What is it that the president knows about the contiguous United States, that we have to be in a war zone? I mean, this is a logical question. Now, like I said, I told you I wrote the president a letter. I just asked him what happened, whatever happened to my complaint that I filed with the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, who never even called me back. And the president never even wrote me back saying, well, the file was destroyed, or this happened, or that happened. I mean, I've got no response here. It's been 2 months, and I've got no response. I mean, we have a government that does not respond to questions that the people are asking. These are legitimate questions, and they are not only legitimate questions, but they are very serious questions, like, why are we in a war zone? Why do we have this Jade Helm thing rolling out in a couple of weeks? It's going to go for a couple of months, where they're going to be flying helicopters around it at our cost, and we don't have the money for this. I'd rather see them build low-income housing for people. I'd rather see them renew the food stamp program, or do something to help people who need help, but to keep spending money to build up the military bigger and bigger and bigger, when the truth is, I mean, our military is falling behind. I mean, if we were to go to war against Russia, I don't see how we could possibly win. First of all, you couldn't win a war against Russia, because Putin himself said that if you attack us, we're just going to nuke you. We're not going to even fight you, because we're not going to waste our men's lives fighting your Abrams tanks. We're just going to nuke them with a tactical nuke. And then I guess that means that we would respond, and so the whole world would end up being radioactive. I mean, it's a no-win situation. So now the United States Army, I guess, or Navy and Marines that have nothing else to do, so they come back to the United States, and maybe, I think, to divert our attention to something going on here, namely, you'll see MSNBC and Fox News and CNN, they'll all be allowed to have cameramen on the ground there, and they'll be photographing the Marines, jumping out of helicopters and running around with like chickens with their heads cut off with their guns, and frightening everybody and showing that the power that they have. Oh yeah, they're really powerful. It really scares me when the people are being disarmed, and then you've got these helicopters flying around with machine guns that can shoot 6,000 bullets in a minute from the air. And they're supposed to, and then they photograph them, and they kind of glorify this as we have the capability of killing all these people very quickly. I mean, what kind of noble thing is that? I mean, what kind of human rights do we have as Americans, and why should we have to put up with this crap? I mean, we're paying for this, and these politicians don't even answer our questions. That's why I'm saying we have got to vote these people out, because they are not representative of our wishes. They are not helping us increase our wages. They are not helping us get our jobs back. They are not helping us build up our businesses. We are becoming less competitive versus other countries. We're falling far, far behind. And it's almost like a child who isn't getting what he wants, so he goes on a temper tantrum and he starts taking his toys, and in the case of the United States, their toys are going to be their helicopters and their jet planes and their army men with their guns, and they're going to start running around and frightening everybody. And I think what they're trying to say is, well, we're laying down the law, and the law is us, and whatever we say is what goes. No, 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 no. Listen, see, these people don't quite get it. The way it works here is that the people are running the government. The government does not run the people. The government works for the people. No one over there in the southwest of the United States wants this Jade Helm thing. I mean, I just watched about 1,000 people being interviewed over the last couple of days, and no one that I heard, maybe one or two nuts might say, well, they might need to do their exercises or whatever, but 99.9% of the American people don't want this. And I guarantee you, if the couple of people that say, well, it's okay for them to hold exercises, if they were told to take out their wallet and pay for it, they would say, hell no, I don't have the money for this. So the fact is, no one really wants this. No one wants to pay for it. Furthermore, don't have the money to pay for it. And I don't know what it's going to prove. All it's going to prove is that they have a tank that's capable of going up against somebody's house and shooting a lot of holes in it and killing you and your wife and your children. And so how is that? And it's going to make a lot of noise. These things are supposed to be flying around at night, they say. I mean, what's to stop them from turning into some kind of a Nazi Gestapo and throwing bags over people's heads who are Republicans and taking them to a FEMA camp? Or putting bags over people's head who are Democrats and taking them away? Or throwing bags over people's head who are upset that the United States is being declared a war zone. Now, if we're a declared war zone, I have to ask you, why are we in a war zone? Who is our enemy? It's just like you know, the water company. I mean, we've got toxic water comes to my house for 2 years. The water company knows it, but by law they don't have to tell us until they can't fix it for 2 years, which means for 2 years that we could have been drinking bottled water, we've been damaging our kidneys and our liver. I've got this in writing right here. It damages your kidneys and your liver. And so the point is, why can't the government just be honest with the people? See, I want to take people like this and I want to put them in jail because they're not being honest with the American people. And they're not telling us what's happening. The American people are smart enough that they can take precautionary measures, and no matter what it is, if maybe an asteroid's going to hit the Earth or whatever, and we only have 2 years to live, and so they're practicing how to round people up so that when the end is coming, they can make sure that everybody is peacefully in their house as we all die from an asteroid hitting the Earth. But the fact is that even if we knew that that were true, maybe some people might want to retire early and go on a vacation for 2 years and enjoy the last 2 years of their life on a cruise ship, or going on a vacation, or spending extra time with their family, or doing something like that. But the simple fact that we don't know, all we know is that we're in a war zone for an unknown reason. So this whole secrecy thing is gone way over the edge, and I believe that secrecy between the government and the people is a criminal offense. It's an affront to the right of the people to know what the government's doing, and it's also dereliction of duty with respect to your congressman and your senator telling you exactly what's going on and why they're doing what they're doing. And the simple speak that, well, they're just practicing for urban warfare. Well, what makes them expect that there is going to be urban warfare? And if they knew where there were going to be urban warfare, why did they pass a law, or trying to pass a law right now that says, well, you're not allowed to buy body armor? I mean, if they knew that something bad was going to happen, why wouldn't they offer trainers to train people who are old enough still to carry a rifle, and like the Swiss, pass M16s out to people who are old enough and wise enough and don't have criminal records or any kind of problems, and who can still shoot straight. Why don't they pass out rifles to everybody in the neighborhood so that each house is armed, and then if ISIS shows up, you wouldn't even need the police. The locals could just shoot them, because the locals know who's supposed to be in town and who isn't supposed to be in town. You wouldn't even need to have army tanks rolling around. If we need an army tank, we'll call you. Don't call on us. But this taking over like 1/4 of the United States, and a year or two after you declare the United States a battle zone, a declared war zone, I mean, I have to wonder if these people are insane, or if they are really trying to do something bad to us and they're not telling us. And I suspect that there's something bad coming down the pike and they don't want to tell us. So now that's misrepresentation. I mean, if I'm your real estate broker and I'm representing you and trying to sell your house, and I know something bad about the house, I'm obligated to tell the buyer that there's something bad about the house. Maybe I know the house has termites, so I have to tell them that the house has termites, and they can take remedial action and kill the termites and fix the house. And whatever is wrong, no matter what it is, it's better for the people to know, however bad it is, that something bad is about to happen, or going to happen, or might happen, so that the people can take precaution and try to mitigate it, rather than to let this disaster go out of hand like New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans, I firmly believe that whole Hurricane Katrina was the government, not only didn't they help those people, but they actually did things that made the situation worse. It was like the Three Stooges. I mean, if the government had just gone away and not been there to help the people at all, and the people knew that the government wasn't coming to help them, they would have been more likely to move out, or to gather water, or do whatever. But the people were under the misunderstanding, I think, that they were told the hurricane was coming. They were under the misbelief that there was this organization called FEMA, that if anything bad happened, well, the government was going to take care of them. And many of those people there are very poor, and they're on food stamps, and I guess they're kind of used to the government taking care of them, so they probably firmly believe that the government would honestly take care of them. But the government hasn't practiced for something like that. I mean, when Hurricane Katrina hit, it was like the first time something like that had happened. Well, I mean, we had hurricanes in Florida, but when those levees broke, and I guess they weren't ready for that. In any case, they made matters worse. They disarmed honest people that had weapons, and you had looters running around in the street, and those looters, when they went to loot people's houses who were wealthier, and maybe they did own a nice property, and maybe they had a handgun or they had a shotgun, they could have defended themselves against looters, and they wouldn't even have needed the police. I mean, the truth is, we really don't need the government. You know, if you're in the government and you just go away and we don't ever see you again, that'd be fine with us. I really think that life would go on. You know, we could have government at the local level. We don't need Washington telling us what to do. I mean, I'm not against having a central government, because, I mean, you have to have somebody acting as a liaison between the entire country, as an entire continental body, to negotiate with foreign nations. But these people aren't even doing a good job at that. The only negotiating they're doing is they're sending tanks and weapons and assault rifles and guys to shoot people over there, and they're droning them, and they don't, according to the drone operators, they're not even sure who they're killing. So I submit to you that our government is not functioning properly, and that we would be better off with if a government is not functioning properly, we'd be better off without them than them functioning improperly, because an improperly functioning government is causing more troubles than a government that's functioning, but it's functioning improperly, because they could do more. They're going to do more damage, because they're going to say, well, I have power, listen to me, and I'm going to organize you a certain way, and we're going to have all these plans, this is what we're going to do. And so people expect them to behave that way when things happen, and then when the crap hits the fan, they don't have the money to do what they say they're going to do, so they lied about that. They lied about helping you. Instead of helping you, they want to give you a loan. They're not doing anything to help you. I mean, When I was down in New Orleans, I mean, what I saw that seemed to be working out the best was Walmart just came down there with a couple of big truckloads of water and gave them water. I mean, that's what they needed, clean water. The water that they were wading through was dirty water. It had sewage in it. It was dirty, and it was just a real mess. I mean, those people should have been allowed to leave, and instead the police were, being governmental servants, the police were actually stopping those people from leaving when they didn't have any food, they didn't have any clean water, and they should have been allowed to leave. Because if when I went down there, I clearly remember that the towns that were not that far away from Hurricane Katrina, just 20-30 miles up the road, they suffered some wind damage, but they were open, and they had electricity, and they had food, and the grocery store was open. They had hotel rooms to rent. I mean, if the government really wanted to help people, they would have let them leave and go to these other communities until they could have figured out what to do. But it's almost like they wanted to keep those people there so that they could suffer and get ill and die. And they actually shot people. They actually were shooting people as they tried to run over that Route 10 bridge. I think it was a Route 10 bridge. One of the bridges going over there was knocked down, but there were ways to get out of the city, and the police were blocking it off. So I just see where, to me, if the police want to stop you from moving around, then they're actually impeding your human right to run for safety. It would be like in Ukraine when the war broke out between the East and the West. As you know, the eastern part of Ukraine, they had a referendum. They wanted to become Russian, and they had decades as a neutral country, just Ukraine. They weren't part of the EU, and they weren't part of the old Soviet Union anymore either. They were just the Ukraine. And one part of the country has the industry, and then the western part of the country just wanted to join the EU and get a lot of loans. And they were more intellectual, while the other side of the country was more industrial. But the Soviet Union has a lot of interest there. So a lot of their weapons are made there. Uranium is mined there. They have a nuclear power plant there. I mean, so that was all put in under the Soviet Union. So, I mean, if those people make a decision that they want to become Russian, especially since that part of the country, the eastern part, votes Russian, they should be allowed to become Russian. Now, I would imagine that right after Hurricane Katrina, if you had a vote and they said, we want to become a part of Mexico, those people probably would have said, yeah, I'd rather become a part of Mexico than to have this, because the United States wasn't helping them. They were shooting at them, and then they were taking their guns away. It would have been better off if they weren't Americans. I just don't know how they weren't helped in any way. But I have to wonder what's going on right now, because right now small businesses still can't get loans at the bank. The banks that are larger and capable of making loans, the first thing they ask the small business guy who got wiped out in the 2008 when the bubble burst are asking you about your credit, and they're saying, well, your credit went down. Well, everybody's credit went down when the bubble burst, and whose credit went down the most? The people, the credit rating of the banks went down the most because they were one day from bankruptcy, from complete total collapse, and the government bailed them out. So suppose the government, when they bailed them out, had said, well, let's look at your credit report, and let's look at a real credit report, not a falsely generated credit report. We're going to say, okay, well, if we don't give you this loan, tomorrow you're going to go bankrupt. Well, I would say the credit report, and if you had an honest credit report on someone who's going to go bankrupt tomorrow, you wouldn't make them a loan, because you're going to say, well, you're going to go bankrupt tomorrow. So, but if you didn't need the loan and everything was fine, they would say, okay, well, we're going to give you a loan, because that's the way the credit report works. Kind of like if you don't need a loan, you don't need the help, then they're going to give you a loan. And the really bad thing about this is that the government lies so much to the people. You know, the real estate company that I own, which is a property management company, not only sold real estate, but we did a lot of rentals too. We were told that the economy was going to improve, and and Fox News kept on talking about the subprime loans, and a lot of the work we were doing wasn't subprime, and so, but that was all lies. You know, the whole thing was headed for a collapse. And if many of those people had gone out of business in 2004 or 2005 before things had turned bad and just retired early, they'd have been better off. But instead, they kept their businesses open and they kept working hard. And then when the banks went broke, they got a bailout. And then when these Main Streeters like me and other people who had businesses on Main Street, quote unquote, went to the bank and said, well, you know, you told me that you would support me, and I even have it in writing here that I have a line of credit. Those line of credits were all yanked. Now, why would the line of credit be yanked when the bank was bailed out? You would think that that money should have filtered down to Main Street, but it was given to the banks with no strings attached. Once again, your congressman did not do you a favor, and you may have lost your job because your boss couldn't get a loan to keep his business going at a time when he needed it the most. Even though the bank was given a bailout, that bailout money should have been used to keep the economy floating properly so that we could smooth out the bubble. So instead of having a spike where the economy goes up, it would have been, even if the economy was allowed to go up, which it was, and then it was discovered that, okay, well, we screwed up, there should have been financing provided to allow those businesses to continue, and eventually it would have come back into equilibrium. Maybe they would have lost some customers, but they would have had enough money to cover negative cash flow. You have to remember that when you own a business, you have a year that you make money, and then you might have a year that you don't make money. But over the long term, if you add up year by year by year, you make a living. So, but you might not make it all in 1 year. That's why you put your money in the bank when you do good, and then you draw down on that money when you're not doing good, or you have arranged a line of credit so that you can borrow money, because if you're building something, for example, for people, you're going to need to lay money out in order to produce something. Like if you're a printer, you might need to buy a lot of paper. You might have to buy thousands of dollars worth of materials in order to print a job for somebody that you might sell for $10,000. You might need $5,000 worth of supplies. Not to mention that you have a payroll to make. So the bank, it was almost like everybody lied, and your congressman lying to you now. If you write your congressman a letter right now and you ask him, why is the United States in a war zone? Why are we in a declared battlefield zone? And see what he says. You'll either get an answer that says, thank you for writing me, and you know, I'm up for re-election next year, and we're focusing on this and we're focusing on that, and we have to make sure Hillary Clinton doesn't become the president. Or something generic, but they're not going to be able to answer the question. Or they're going to say, well, I signed for that because it was in the Patriot Act, part of the Patriot Act, or part of the NDA, or was part of some kind of omnibus bill that was so big, and if I hadn't signed for that, then the government wouldn't have been funded, and then the government would have had to shut down. Now, what kind of an answer is that? You know, why can't these congressmen get together and just say, you know, there are some preposterous things in here, and by having an omnibus bill that has a couple of preposterous things in there, if they can't figure out a way of taking the preposterous items out, like we're in a battle zone, in a war zone here, then your man's not doing you right. It's like I said, these guys all have to go because they're not telling you the truth. They even voted in part of the law that says that they're allowed to lie and they're allowed to propagandize. And that's why so many businesses stayed open and so many businesses went bankrupt, because they kept their doors open instead of retiring early in 2003 and 2004 and 2005 when things were doing well and they still had money in the bank. They invested in their businesses as times got tough, because Fox News and the major news companies were telling everybody, probably because the government told them to, tell everybody that everything's okay and the economy is turning around, and they lied about pretty much everything with regard to the economy. And so the businessmen were hurt by this, so they spent every last penny keeping their doors open, and then when it came time to ask the bank for a loan, the banks were in trouble, and then the banks were bailed out, but like I said, there was no pass-through on that money to the people. So I would like to see, I mean, if I could have anything I wanted, I'd like to see every congressman replaced by somebody new, and they would have to be someone who believed wholeheartedly in the Constitution. They would have to be an oath keeper. As you know, an oath keeper is a person who swears to uphold the Constitution no matter what. So whether it's a woman or a man or an old person or a young person, what matters is that they believe in and they follow the Constitution, because our founding fathers went through a lot of the troubles that we're going through today. And that's exactly why they wrote the Constitution. They wrote the Constitution so when in the future, if the government should get off track or start to go crazy or become fascist or become communist, that the lawyers, and I blame the lawyers too, because they're not doing their job either, and the judges in the legislative branch are, they should start questioning a lot of these laws. I mean, they're supposed to keep the laws in check. So if the Congress passes a bill and Senate agrees with it and it gets on the president's desk and he signs it, and then someone sues and says, wait a minute here, we're not in a war zone, or wait a minute here, these guys are opening up a whole new department called the NSA that's spying on everybody and listening in, or there's some kind of secret, which I disagree with laws that are secret, because they could do anything to you. They could just say, all right, we're going to make a new law that says as soon as you turn 35 years old, they're going to chop your head off, because they don't want anybody to be 35 years old anymore. And that's going to be a way of controlling the population. I mean, they can pass any kind of law in secret that they want. And if we don't have judges and a legislative branch that's allowed to examine these laws and compare them to the Constitution, then we have no what they call checks and balances. That's why you've got the separate divisions of government. And so it's really the final say is going to be the Supreme Court. And they have to look at all be able to look at these laws, and you can't even say to the Supreme Court, well, you know, I want to talk about this and ask you whether or not this is legal or not, when the Supreme Court justice isn't even allowed to look at the law because they say it's so secret that the judge can't even see it. Well, I mean, you've got crazy people running the government. These people all have to go, and you have to have oath keepers in power. Otherwise, it would be better if you completely eliminated the federal government and allowed local governments that are more easily controlled by the people, who could go down to their city hall. I mean, I can't very easily get in my car and go to Washington and you know, talk to the President of the United States if I have I'm an honest person, I've never been arrested, I have many professional credentials, and I'm old enough to know what time it is, and I want to sit down with him and have a 30-minute talk about some of these things. I mean, I don't have a chance. I don't have a prayer's chance in hell of getting his ear. I can't even get him to write me back a letter regarding something that's fairly serious. He won't even respond with "give me a donation" or something. So I mean, under these kind of pretenses, you could have somebody in power who's more like a king. And if everything is a secret, then the people don't know, then they could do anything they want to you, like I say. And now they're running the military all over the United States, the Southwest United States. For 2 months, they're going to be running the military roughshod over the people. And what's that going to prove? I mean, first of all, you took away all the ammunition by buying billions of bullets, and I'm asking you now, what did you buy the billions of bullets for? And they're saying, oh, well, they gave some of it to NOAA, to the weather people. Now, why do the weathermen need AK-47 ammunition and M16 ammunition and 9mm bullets? I mean, why do they need this? Why does the IRS need this? I mean, if the IRS is running into someone who's a nutcake or something, they could call the FBI or they could call the police to handle it. But the bottom line is, you know, why do they need all these bullets and so many of them, and they're not even illegal ammunition to use in a war? These bullets are against the Geneva Convention. I mean, they're okay around the house for private citizens to use for self-defense, but they're illegal to use in a war. They're against the Geneva Convention. A lot of these bullets are hollow point bullets, and furthermore, they cost more than regular bullets. So the argument that some of the congressmen have responded, well, we use them for practice ammunition. Well, that's ridiculous too. I mean, first of all, they don't need that many bullets for practice, number one. And number two, first of all, if you put two and two together, you see, first of all, last year and the year before and the year before that, they bought all the bullets, and now all of a sudden they're rolling out the army on the streets of the United States. So they say, well, they're not going to be armed. Well, we know that they have the arms, and we know that they have the bullets. So who's to say that, you know, they're not lying to us again? I mean, everything they said to us is a lie. Not only is it a lie, but it's the actual opposite. You know, if you look at the things that they say and tell you in Washington, you find out that not only do they lie, but it's the opposite. It's worse than a lie. So, like I say, if you have a government the way things are running now, it's better not to have them at all. You're better off just doing away with them, and you could govern yourself by your state government and by your local government. And that would be something that would be more easily controllable by the people. But having a government that's, you know, for most people in the United States, Washington is 1,000 miles away, if not 3,000 miles away, or 500 miles away. But on average, let's just call it 1,000 miles away. So, you know, why should we have a government 1,000 miles away telling us what to do? Furthermore, I think if the states get fed up and they say, well, you know, we want to secede from the country, I don't see how or why the government should send. I kind of get the impression that if they're doing this Jade Helm thing, I guess they're trying to prove to Texas, you better not think about breaking away, because they do think about breaking away. I think they had a bill passing through the state house in Texas that they were thinking about seceding. So. And I think it got a lot of votes, so maybe they're nervous about New Mexico and Utah seceding and Idaho seceding from the United States.
Well, the IRS just got 60, they just procured 60 12-gauge pump-action shotguns for the IRS Criminal Investigation Division.
Okay,
and they
so
have 3,000 armed officers.
Okay, so
IRS agents.
And the IRS agent have 3,000 armed officers. While they're disarming the American people, they're arming the IRS officers. I mean, look, people, I don't want a government that has so many guns in the hands of organizations that are not supposed to be dealing with criminals. I mean, if somebody doesn't pay their taxes and they get a levy or a lien against them, then that's a judicial matter, and then they could, if they have to put a lien against their house or something like that, then that's a matter that in the end it's going to end up in the sheriff's and the deputies and the marshal's hands, and they already have guns. I mean, I don't want, if the IRS has a gun, then that would be like the police officer shooting that kid in the back without a trial, because the IRS is coming down and they're going to say, well, you didn't file your taxes or something. Well, if you didn't file your taxes, they have procedures where, okay, then first they're going to ask you why, then they're going to ask you to file politely several times, and if you don't comply, then maybe they're going to turn you over to put a lien against you, and then they're going to foreclose on the lien. So why would the IRS need guns?
They also have SWAT teams.
And then SWAT teams. So I mean, why would they SWAT team anybody? If they need to SWAT team somebody, what they need to do is call the newspaper boy up and knock on the door, and newspaper boy can say, "Oh, the IRS is here and they want to audit you." The whole theory that the IRS, or next thing you're going to do is you're going to be arming the Postal Service. And they're going to deliver your mail, and then they're going to shoot you. I mean, and if these people can all have guns, why is it that you're trying to disarm the American people? And why is the United States, once again I ask you, why is the United States a declared war zone, and all these guns are being given to departments of the United States like NOAA, and you're arming NOAA against who? If the government is so afraid of the people, then maybe they done pissed the people off enough that maybe they ought to step down. Like I said, my idea is the best way is not to, fighting these people is not the best way to do it. Best way to do it is in the ballot box. You just need to shut up. You need to do what I'm saying. And my rules way for fixing this is, do not ever vote for someone who's already in power, because they have done nothing but not serve you. They're derelict in their duty, and they lied to you. They passed a law that said that they're allowed to lie to you, and they put you under state of war. The United States is in a state of war, and your congressman signed off on this, and your senator. So don't vote for any of these guys over again. You need to vote somebody new who is an oath keeper. Number two, you need to show up at voting time, and we need to put only oath keepers in power. And number three, all of these laws that have been put in power allowing these guys to arm up who don't need to have arms. These are not police people. They're tax collectors, and I think the IRS needs to just be done away with, because it's not doesn't have to do with not paying taxes. It has to do with the intrusive IRS forms that you need to fill in that create a dossier on you. I don't think the government should have a dossier on each and every person. And a matter of fact, I think if anyone who spies on you, even if it's the government itself, then that's a violation of the Constitution and the right to privacy, which was taken very seriously by our founding fathers. And if I get in power, I'm going to actually throw people in prison. If you're working for the government, you're a public servant, and you are starting a dossier on somebody for no reason whatsoever or as a normal practice, you're going to go to jail for 10 years for breaching people's personal rights. And moreover, I'm going to extend this even to private corporations. When you sign up, for example, a new computer program, and you read these end user licenses, it says, oh, we're allowed to send your name and your address and your information to a third party. Well, usually they're a third party, because let's say you already have Microsoft Windows installed on your computer, or Apple or something installed on your computer. So now call that the first party. Then you want to put an application on your computer. Now you're dealing with a third party, and then they're going to send, if you read their end user license, it says they can share data with another private organization, and then they can share it because they have a user license with them. And the next thing you know, your private information is circulating, and everybody has all your private information. And I say the hammer has got to drop at a certain point, where you've got to start throwing people in jail who are taking your private information and creating a dossier, because it's going to create a lot of, right now one of the major crimes in the United States is people stealing other people's identity, which leads me to, if your identity gets stolen and somebody using your identity does something bad, the SWAT team might show up at your house for something that somebody else did. So with this information going out all around the world, you see where it just isn't anything good, it's just bad. The government should only be, the federal government should only be there to have embassies open in other countries so that they can negotiate peace treaties, they can negotiate for certain business rights, and negotiate matters of national significance with other ambassadors from other countries. And the other countries are going to have embassies in the United States so that they can deal with us at an intellectual level, not at gunpoint level. That doesn't mean that but the government should not be in a position where, okay, it's going to treat all the citizens like the enemy of some kind. And if they believe that the citizens are the enemy, then maybe they're doing things that are angering the citizenry to such a point that they're passing law after law after law, and every one of these laws is unconstitutional, and the people don't like it, and through the NSA's ears, which is all illegal, they feel that the people are getting ready to overthrow the government. Well, the overthrow is going to occur at the ballot box, as far as my way of doing it. Yeah, there's going to be an overthrow, but the overthrow is going to be legitimate and it's going to be legal, and we're going to just take all these people who are in power now and vote them out and only put oath keepers back in power, and the government can change back to the way it was in 1950. Look, folks, I was alive, through the 60s and 70s, and life was different then in the United States. Things were way, way different. Many police didn't carry guns, let alone, shotguns or, machine guns and assault rifles and body armor. I mean, this is ridiculous. And you had just as much right to have a gun back then as you do now. You had a right to bear arms back in the 60s. And many people had guns. I had a .22 and a shotgun, and they got stolen. But still, I was able to, and legally allowed to buy it. I could go buy another one today if I wanted one, but I don't feel like I need to. I don't have the money anyway, and if I did, I'd put the money towards running for office so that I can fix this whole problem. We need to be able to get our businesses back and re-industrialize ourselves. Otherwise, everything that we buy is going to be made somewhere else. As it is now, pretty much 90% of everything you buy is made in China or made somewhere else now. If they cut us off and say, well, we don't want to sell to the United States anymore because, the first reason they might not want to sell to us is because they don't want to accept the dollar. They're opening up that brick bank. Maybe our government is going crazy against the people because they know that the dollar is going to be useless very soon, and the people are going to lose their entitlements, and they're going to go insane when they lose their entitlements. I think it's not going to be a pretty sight when that happens, but I think the government can just issue dollars, and I think that we can just stimulate the local economy enough that people aren't going to starve. We have enough land that we can grow our own food. Food is the main reason why people would lose it, because they'd be starving to death. And water, the United States has plenty of agricultural land. We could feed the earth many times over, assuming that we grow and handle our land properly. We have the fuel to run the tractors. We have fresh water in the ground that can be used to water the agriculture that we need and to give water to the people, albeit maybe in some cases like where I live it might need to be filtered because it's got toxins in it that you would think they would tell you about, so you would buy a filter long before your kidneys were damaged. And moreover, I would make a law that says that if the water companies, if they're a municipal water company, if there's anything wrong with the water, they need to tell you right away. They aren't allowed to wait 2 years to try to remediate first and then tell you later. And then if they remediate, let's say they are able to remediate, then maybe they never tell you. Just like Fukushima, when the radiation was coming from the first initial plumes from Fukushima, I mean, I was out in the rain, and President Obama said there's no threat. So, but there was, and they knew it, and they had instruments. And you know what? Now we're finding out they just turned the instruments off. So, I mean, the government has done nothing to protect the people. Now, granted, they're giving food stamps to people who, so they don't starve to death, but I think maybe if you took the government and said, well, that's about all it does, that and run a military, but not run the military in the United States, because that's posse comitatus anyway, I think that would be about it. And you also have to ask yourself, why did I don't know, how many officers in the last 5 years were let go because of religion or because of beliefs? I mean, thousands of our senior officers were let go by Obama or terminated because they wouldn't press the button to fire a nuclear weapon at Russia, because they didn't want, they knew that we weren't at war, but they get a message that said, okay, here's a secret code, push the button. And I'm not saying that they should disobey orders and that the high-ranking officers may not know everything that the president knows, but the way things are now, I think some of these high-ranking officers are questioning orders from the president, because they're talking about what they call total global dominance, where they are talking about a first strike against the rest of the world, where they want to just launch nuclear missiles at everybody and wipe out the whole earth except the United States. And to think that the United States wouldn't be retaliated against by Russian submarines that may survive, that will survive any kind of initial attack, it's going to be a death sentence for anyone except somebody who's in one of these underground bunker caves or whatever. But they're going to die too, because eventually they're going to have to come out, and the people who survive it are going to track down where these bunker holes are, and they're going to probably want to burn these bastards out who burned the earth down. And so I don't see how they're going to survive. They're not going to have any friends when they come back to the surface of the earth. Anyone who survives, who may be in South Antarctica or something when this happens, and maybe they'll survive the initial blast. But the point is, you know, you have to ask yourself, why are we in a war zone? Why are the police being militarized? Why are there so many secrets? What is this Jade Helm thing really about? Why is the government allowed to propagandize? It's like, look, we are being set up for something that either the government knows something that very bad is going to happen and they're not telling us, and if they did tell us, we could take action to prevent it from happening or to mitigate the damage of it. Or they're just literally going to turn us all into slaves or something, and they're practicing turning us into slaves, and we're all going to end up bowing down to the president as if he were some kind of god. Did you ever watch Stargate, where you got that godlike dude called Apophis, and they've got the worm living in the if you watch Stargate, you get the gist. Where you have the god of the planet, and he's in charge of the planet, and he'll kill anybody who doesn't fall in line and do exactly what he says. I mean, and so you're going to basically lose all your freedoms, and you can forget about the Constitution. See, I think that the government just wished that pesky Constitution didn't exist, but I'm saying that when you have the government running amok or running into trouble, or anything bad happening that starts to make you wonder what to do, instead of coming down on the people and sort of blaming the people for this, you need to say, look, let's go back to the Constitution. And we talked about this before. You need to reboot and go back to your Constitution and throw away all the laws that violate the Constitution. Then you need to do a quantitative easing to jumpstart the economy so that we can start our industry again, so that no matter what the other countries think about us, even if they form their own currency, even if the dollar isn't the currency of the global currency of reserve, it won't matter, because if the dollar is accepted locally and we're able to feed the world many times over, we're able to certainly feed ourselves, and we're able to produce our own television sets and our own computers and our own light bulbs, and we have more electrical producing plants than anybody else in the world. We have more power than we need. We have our own ability to make oil. We have our own water. We have everything we need. That if the whole world didn't like us, it wouldn't really matter. But does that mean that we need to blow up the rest of the world because we don't like what they're doing, and the Rothschilds don't want to lose? They're in charge of the dollar, and they don't want to lose the value, the fact that they can print money off of a printing press and give it to themselves and become trillionaires without working. What about the rest of the people? Well, they don't care about the rest of the people, apparently. I mean, I do care about the rest of the people. I mean, I harmed my career terribly by going after Allstate because of what they were doing and the disparate treatment. I think I've certainly proven my mettle, and as your leader, I will make sure that there isn't going to be disparate treatment. And no one is going to live homeless, and no one is going to starve to death, and no one is going to go without medical attention. And I'm not going to turn anybody into a slave. I'm going to allow student loans to be bankruptable. And I don't care if we have to do a quantitative easing number 4, I'm going to make sure that the oligarchs don't get the money. The money is going to be paid to the businesses, the business owners. And the ones that are going to get the money are not the ones that have good credit per se. They're going to be the ones that were actually in business when the bubble burst and they ended up losing their business because they were lied to, and they didn't retire early, that they kept their businesses open, and as the bubble burst and things went down, they took money out of their own pocket, went into negative cash flow, and then when it came time to ask for help from the bank turned their back on them. Those people, their credit rating now is bad, so you can't tell those people, sorry, your credit is bad, we're not going to support you. Those people should be given grants. I propose giving them like anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million grant, assuming you could even talk them into going back in business again. But you'd have to promise them that the Constitution will be upheld, and that the people in power are all going to be oath keepers, and that the police aren't going to bust their door down and shoot them all for no reason at all, just for opening up a business. And maybe they had a sign that's the wrong color, and for some reason the government didn't like that and decided to shoot them over it. I mean, you've got the government literally running amok, and I really do blame our lawyers and our legislative branch for not reining this crap in. I mean, they know about it, it needs to be reined in. Our Constitution has got to be followed to the letter, and the Supreme Court and the Appellate Court and even down to the local court has got to look at every single case that comes before it. And lawyers need to argue not whether or not somebody broke the law, but whether or not the law is legal in the first place. That's the whole key here, because half of the laws that are on the books right now are illegal. It's not that people don't break the law. You can't walk down the street without breaking the law anymore, because the laws are all illegal. When anything should happen to you, the court has got to look at whether or not the law is legal. And so I'm going to propose a QE4 and anywhere from a $500,000 to a $1 million grant to anybody, regardless of their credit, who can prove that they were in business and they had a legitimate organization going, business going, during the time that the banks got the bailout. Because that money really shouldn't have gone to the banks. It should have gone to those businesses to keep our industry going. And also, someone who has a good idea and wants to open up a new light industry or a heavy industry to produce something that's necessary and wants to borrow money, I think it should be very easy for them to get money. In fact, it should be quantitative easing should be allowed to let those people borrow money. And even if those businesses fail, that money still will be spent in society, and it will stimulate the economy right away by virtue of the fact that you will hire people to work for you because you reopen your business. And so even if 5 years later you go broke, then the bank will say, oh, well, you didn't pay me back. What difference does it make? That money was spent by hiring employees, and it was spent in the economy, and it stimulated the economy. Call it a Star Trek economy if you want, whatever, but I say we could keep that going as long as need to, until it eventually becomes profitable. And some of these businesses will be phased out over time, but you can't give somebody just 1 year to catch their breath and catch back up again. It's going to take 10 years to bring back what we had before. And we also need to change the direction from a service economy to an industrial-based economy. We need both service and we need industry, because we need to make these items that we buy overseas. We need to make them right here. And this whole operating the Army in the United States has just got to stop. I mean, if we have money for that, we have money to bail out our businesses. And once again, folks, give me a call. I love to talk to people. If you have any insurance questions, real estate questions, we also need you to sign that petition so that I can run for office. And we'll throw these bastards out, and we're going to get oath keepers in. Only oath keepers will be allowed to be senators, congressmen, or the President of the United States. Thank you.